Welcome back to Let's Talk Race and Ireland. I'm your host, Harrison Paul. Today we're going to chat about Britain making its way to the final for a consecutive year. I'm happy for a very, very kind man like Gareth Southgate. I do believe he has gotten a lot of slack. I'm happy for that guy. But as you know, this is a page where we talk about black consciousness. So I'm going to get into, although I'd love to be a football nerd today, we're going to get into what this, how this pertains to us as black people. And as we know, they would hate us to repeat it, and they would hate us to mention it any more than we are. But black players had a lot to do with this. If we're considering the fact that the last tournament when Saka missed his penalty, and two other black players missed their penalties, Rashford and Sancho, we do understand that we became the scapegoat. And look how we threw it away, and racism comes out in that moment. And I always say it's not just about, I remember at that time I was working with this company, and one of my work colleagues said, we should just remove Twitter. It's just Twitter's fault. And I'm kind of like, nah, Twitter is just a platform in which these type of people can amplify their way of thinking. But I really hated the way we focused and we honed in on if we can just remove Twitter, if we can just get rid of the trolls. And it's like, no, that I always hate it coming across as if the trolls or the guy at the bus stop who calls you an N-word, the junkie who's off his head calls you an N-word, then that's the only reason that racism still is very bad. I think these things actually reflect what happens in day-to-day life. And I was watching the clip of this old man, I'll actually play it on the screen, old African man who was literally praying for Saka. And let's watch this, because I just think it's hilarious, right? I'm going to watch this there. Check this out.
Oh, Jesus, you will score. You will score. You will score, Saka. You will score. Father! Saka score in the name of Jesus. Score! Score! Score, Saka, in the name of Jesus. You will not miss. In the name of Jesus. In the name of Jesus. Amen.
And what's funny about it is that, and I remember I showed that to my lady, and she was watching it, and there's another clip as well. But she was like, "Is football that serious?" Because she's with me now, and she sees how football is a serious thing. You know what I mean? I'll put everything aside. Like tonight, I got my match, or to this Saturday morning, I got my match. You know what I mean? So, but I was like, nah, this isn't football. This is, how you can get secondhand embarrassment. This is when you know what it feels like to be in an environment where people are so quick to dump the fault on black people. Oh, you know what I mean? Whether it be in a work environment, whether it be anything like that, you don't really have as much patience and tolerance as other people get, have the leeway to have, and you do feel that. So that's why we always have secondhand embarrassment for for each other when it's like a black person who's behaving a certain way. You're like, oh, don't he's misrepresenting us as a community. White people don't feel that, majority of the time, of like every single white person, they have a secondhand embarrassment of like, oh, black people are going to see us and think this of us. Not maybe, especially not on the topic of racism, but I don't really think so either. We would have fixed it by now. But just in normal behavior, weirdish behaviors, it's kind of like, oh, let them don't make a bad name for us all. And we live with that burden, right? Because we do understand that, we are. A lot of times we're painted with the same brush. That's what blacks do. That's what this do. That's what whatever. And we've understood that language, right? So when this uncle is praying here, it's what it feels like as a black person when they're so easily say, oh, it was the Nigerians again. It was the this again. And you face that on a day-to-day basis. So we're all at home, and I said I was damn near in tongues like that man was there, that uncle was there. Because what that feeling is of like, yep, they just love to say it was the blacks again, wasn't it? The blacks again. And you fight for that, and that's where your heart was, at your mouth, like, let a white boy miss, let it not be a black boy, you know what I mean? Because, and also it's as if we are fighting to earn our right to be called British or English or European. So it's like you do know how much is on the line. It's like landing a contract. It's like when you can actually score that goal, it's like brownie points for black people. Like, okay, yeah, I guess I could get used to calling black people Irish or British. I guess they are one of us. It's like that's why we're always constantly tap dancing. Ask yourself, why is there always a black person somewhere in work or somewhere tap dancing white people? Why? Because it's constantly that thing of like, okay, trying to belong, trying to get closer to the identity of being British or being Irish, and we lose ourselves in the process, right? But we're going to get to something really interesting today, because what I want to talk about is I want to contextualize this again, not only for black people, but I want to contextualize it even more for black Irish people. And today this video is going to be called Why I Think Ireland has not advanced with sports, with football more so, because I can speak for that because I know more about it. Why they've not advanced like other, like France or like England. And we do know the black players really, really did play their part when it comes to, I don't like to say any player carried the team because that's not a football mentality to have. I would be reckless and say black players won them the Euros or black players took them to the finals. It's just not true for the sport of football. That's the truth about it. Because while you were scoring a goal, there was a guy making sure goals didn't go in the back of the net. While you were trying to work the right side of the pitch, there was a guy in the back of the left who you thought was very inconvenient. Who I want to say superficial fans think is very inconvenient, and a lot of times it's tough because the goal scorer gets like Ollie Watkins got the man of the match, and of course I love a brother getting the man of the match. He's on for 5 minutes. That's not gonna count the people who have slaved to make sure the ball didn't go in the back of the net more times than it did. So I'm not going to be reckless to show you guys I know the sport and say that it was black people, solely who won them. But it's a major help. And if even you think of France, we already know France has a great record winning the World Cup. And we know France has a great record with black players really pulling their weight in teams like France. And there's jokes out go all the time. I think even Eddie Abou said, and I put up on the screen, he actually had a funny post and he said, France is filled with Africans. That's cheating, and that's the elephant in the room also with that being said. It's like we do have a capacity to really bring something to a team. We do have a sports capacity. We do have a biological capacity that I feel sometimes it's like that elephant in the room that people don't want to solidify in a sense of like, okay, yeah, we know black people are strong. It's like, okay, we don't really want to say that because if we say it explicitly or whatever, then we would have to, I guess, give them their role in the team or give them, I don't know, whatever. But it is always that thing I feel like people tap dance around, which is black people's ability at times. But I'm going to contextualize this in what we're going through in Ireland. And I feel that if we, I don't even know where I'm going to start with this. I'll start with the post that I posted today, right? And this post is what came to my mind today. And I'm going to read you something I posted today, and I'm going to start from there. So I said, continuing the topic of football. Growing up in Ireland, I always found that black players had to be twice as good to get half the recognition. And even then, they would still be diabolically discriminated against. I know of a graveyard of black talent who were overlooked in favor of boys with Irish surnames for that reason alone. It gave Irish coaches much more pride and joy to see their own shine. This applies to black coaches as well, hence the shortage of black coaches and managers. I understand that football is a subjective sport, but those of you who are willing to listen can definitely sit with ex-black players and ask them if this is true. They will tell you if they are not afraid of you rejecting them, that is. The talent of an average native, and when I said average, I mean like an average player, average native child would be respected, praised more loudly than that of a foreigner's child. Often, the Irish coach struggled to connect with the African parents on a personal level, which hindered their willingness to invest in that child's success and drive them to want to make something happen for that kid and his parents, i.e., pick up a phone, make a phone call to those connections, and say, "Here, there's a player here for you to come and see." This, that, and the third, right? In contrast, the Irish kid with half the talent had an advantage because their parents could connect with the coach on a personal level. "Oh, how are you, John? Oh, I'm grand. Hey, oh, you all right? Yeah. So the match there, and the match there, you're coming on Saturday? Yeah, it should be all right. We're gonna head up in the morning. Oh, really? Yeah. Well, listen, John. I was talking to some lads there from Forest. They said they wanted to. Oh, geez. Oh, look, I'll give them a call. That ability for after a match to kind of say, okay, if the son's name is Andrew, I'm doing this for John and Margaret. You know what I mean? You'll notice I always use John and Margaret as typical Irish elders names because that is Irish elders' names. So there's that connection to say, like, you know what I mean? Okay, Margaret's always up here. Margaret's bringing sandwiches. Margaret brings a sandwich. John will throw a lift where he can. You know what I mean? And you know what? Andrew's not too bad, actually. Andrew's a great player. And then you had the black player who would stroll up by himself, an amazing ability. Never really saw the parents. And I think there was that, I think a lot of our black parents actually probably went to those environments and felt the racial hostility, because I want to say discrimination. I always need to repeat this. It's not going somewhere and feeling like someone has called you the N-word and no, it's not that. It's feeling the eyes of feeling like people are looking at you as a different kind. Feeling that in the air, turning up. Maybe turning up and there's this oh please God, I want to get this today. It's like I really underestimated it as a child, and in fact I felt it as a child. And I remember always in African boys watching this. You just wanted to put your mom to the background. Mom, don't turn up, because you knew. My mom was telling me today. I asked her. My mom used to work for Aviva in finance. Big finance company, and I asked her, "Mom, because I always ask the question." I said to her, I was understanding racism in Ireland from a young child until 19 years old. I moved out at 19 years old. But you understood it as an adult, like you've worked in places and all the sorts. I said, how bad was it? Like, and I said, let's take a good place where you would imagine there'd be good eggs there because everyone there is qualified, everyone there is hardworking people. I said, Aviva, it was called Hibernian, now called Aviva Finance Company. What was that? And she go, "Oh, Harrison, just like terrible in there. You just knew, you knew the undermining of an African, and sometimes condescending can almost come in a nice nature as well. It's someone who's generally uneducated and generally sees you. The media has forced him to see African as lower, and that can discourage you from turning up somewhere. Like, turn up to a place, people look at me like monkey, like I'm a monkey, like there's no why. And she said there was one of her workmates actually who was quite nice. His name was Kieran or something like that. And mom was like, he was always like quite like fascinated about me, always kind of inquisitive and fascinated. And I think mom asked him, "Have you ever seen a black person? Have you ever sat next to a black person?" He goes, "Michael, I've never in my life sat next to a black person. Never mind had it as a friend. I've never sat next to her. And that's the story of a lot of things. A lot of them haven't had those, close relationships with an African. But listen, you've not had a close relationship with a French. How many people have a close relationship with a French person or a Spanish person? But it's worse when the media has also, created this image of this person you've not actually got to have a very good perspective on. So then, of course, there's all these, it's not just solely that, because I know people want to run and snatch, but there's all these different attributes that can cause these different perspectives from, and this complex relationship between white and black people, or African. I want to say the African foreigner, specifically, not the kids who have grown and born here and know how to morph themselves into something that will become presentable to white Irish people. That was our job. You know what I mean? We understood as black kids growing up in Ireland. So I've got to drop that African side because I already know the boys are not gonna. They're not gonna dig that one. You know, anybody, if you're black and you're African, or if you want to understand, go and ask your African friend. They're gonna tell you. Different, maybe the word, different parts of your lifestyle, you were knowing that it wasn't embraced in the world outside. In fact, it was undermined, and it was stigmatized. I don't like stigmatized because stigmatized, you'd have to actually have done something, but it was defamed, right? So Africanness is something you're constantly just trying to maybe just carve it out like a marble carving, and it's okay. Here is this black patty. If I can work this thing. And that's why I'm very against the concept of black patty, because I don't believe it's a natural thing that naturally happened. I believe maybe 50% of it was just natural. Another 50% was actually life and death. Your street credit depended on it. Your respect depended on it. You felt the pain of when you saw it undermined, when you saw it even condescended, even in quote unquote nice ways. Oh, is that Africa? Is it? That uneducated. Oh, okay, I gotta dust that. That's gotta go. That's gotta go. That's why we spend so much time as well, Africans. I know that we can act like we're proud of being African, but we spend so much time trying to commercialize being African. Commercialize. Oh, look, see, we're civilized. You see? No, we don't. Sorry, I'm going a whole footnote here, but just a quick one. I was going to say, guys, the mission wasn't to commercialize Africa. The mission was to say, yes, we are people that are completely different with completely different values and completely different ideologies. And maybe if you take some time to understand us, maybe you might learn something about this earth and about this life that we live in. We're supposed to be different, and that's one of Africa's huge problems, that we think the more westernized we become, the more, we come up to par of this world that's moving at a pace. But maybe even with all the problems the world is facing, maybe Africa has the answers, because Africa does things completely different. And maybe we won't figure out and we won't be able to provide that to the world unless we begin to embrace that wholeheartedly. And there's some things I can go into today about, the special wonders of Africa that have, added stuff to the world, but I'm going to be here all day. So we'll get back to this, right? And I'm just quickly saying about how, that environment and turning up, like that person in my mom's work who said, I've never actually, sat next to her. This was 2007, actually. So as you know, then, this would hinder a parent turning up to the pitch and just said, listen, just go, take your lift and just, you know what I mean? Now we'll get back to this. I address this in the book I'm writing, but I remember vividly black players' attributes always becoming a parody. I understood then, but even more so now with my education, that they were engulfed by the spirit of pure envy. Oh, he's not his age. Why? Because he's genetically superior to your sons? And I want to put a footnote in there. We indulged in that also. There's so much things I wish I could turn back the hands of time, and so many things that they got me to co-sign against my own brothers and sisters. He's not his age. Yeah, he's not, and I'm actually gonna be open here. I know a few great players, and if I'm pretty sure, I think I gossiped about each one of them with somebody else white. And those are great players. I'm not gonna say it, I'm not gonna out it, but I remember I had some, and if you're wondering if that's you, drop me a message and I'll tell you if it was you or if it's not. But I remember some players who had that big, strong stature, and I'd be with some white folks saying, he's not, is he? Tell me, he's not his age, is he? But I could feel that was some envy. Oh, you scared of him, huh? He's got potential. And you kind of say, he is. Yeah, maybe, you never know, joking around with him. Like, huh? Like, just what I'm saying. I wish now when I could turn back the hands of time, wow, why? Because he's bigger than you? Wow, because he's strong? That's, welcome to being black. Welcome to it, that DNA. That Bantu DNA strong, So like, man, I wish I could turn back the hands of time. So much time. I gave people too much rope at times. But you know, and then I'd be with another group of white people and talking about another black player, and we're probably all guilty of this, and I look back and say, man, we did a terrible, terrible, terrible job at fighting for the seriousness of how serious these people need to take us and that they can't play on any of our names. So let's continue here. Maybe when Ireland is willing to take the discrimination that happens from the grassroots level to professional level seriously, you might have world-class talent helping you reach tournament final stages like France and England. Until then, we'll continue putting empty pride over logic. Go run, tell that. So let me take a sip of my coffee because I'm about to get into something really, really, really I've been wanting to get in for some time. So guys, I love the conversations I have with my family here because we really break down this psychology, and it's very helpful because I lived in North America for some time. I've now lived in some UK for some time, and I grew up in Ireland. And it was really good for me to kind of see, I want to say the stages, right? And America definitely is not the final stage, but the furthest stage. And then you have the UK, which is a stage that's further than Ireland again. So it's, I often kind of think, I can't wait to get back to Ireland because I really want to affect that place, But it was, instrumental for me to be in the UK and to understand what it takes to be in UK, never mind like America, in terms of development for black life and that interracial integration of, acceptance of black presence, right? When we take, I'm going to go a little bit to the side and come back. When we take, for instance, the marches that happened, quite recently, and and I'll put some image on the screen. And I saw quite a lot of marches that, some were marches in those areas where there were boys on the mountain bikes and the Nike tracksuits and okay, look, we can put that down to some Egypts, right? But then I saw some where you saw these marches had actually traveled to like upper class people, right? It had actually traveled to really a lot of the population, unless you're a real leftist, they're the only people we can bank on, you know what I mean, who are on a quest for, inclusivity because they have a gay brother, a gay sister, or they themselves are gay. And that really are the only people you can bank on because they have skin in the game, and if you can say it like that. So that's just the way it's gonna be. But even at that, you will find people who are able to somehow silence their own oppression that they face and still isolate the black and brown person in their fights and say, well, that's mine's different there, which is silly in a way. But when I saw the marches going on, it was only recently I was having a conversation with my mother, and she said to me, like, Harrison, never in Britain would you see that happen. Like, you saw the thousands, you saw the class and the category of people. Like, it's one thing for it to be like there was recently a march about foreigners here in the UK, and that was like the Tommy Robinson. And for anybody who doesn't know who Tommy Robinson, I'll put a picture on the screen. He's like, the type of hooligans who show up at the end of a football game, drunk, and they say they're doing it for the Union Jack, or that, that flag, and, they're patriots, but the lunatics, and that's the people who were at that march. Simple, plain and simple. But you wouldn't find your regular Brit at ever attach their names to such ludicrousy like how you've seen in Ireland. Like, people who were middle upper class, showing up to this, these marches across the country. And, what I want to tell you is that black people in Britain have so stamped their, mark and made their mark that, white England understands that these are our people. Like we are related to these people if we look on under the umbrella of English or British. I can't go out there and march against, illegal immigrants, right? And have such a violent march without any sort of thinking about how that will affect my relationship with the Black Brit or how that will make the Black Brit feel any less British. They would much rather do that through manipulating the media, but they would never have the recklessness and the courage to step outside and actually have marches. And when that kind of nonsense can go on, I can understand how the African Negro becomes so docile, because it's like, think of a relationship. I always use a relationship. Think of and I always say, ladies, come on, stick with me. Think of a man just playing in your face. There comes to be a point where if you're not a strong enough woman, you just internalize that. Think of him just like literally like playing in your face in a way like ludicrous, like taking a phone call for another woman right in front of when you were there or something. And like there comes to a place where you see there's some ladies, and you probably see someone you know or probably know of, is in that sunken place where it's like, he's gone to a place where he's kind of communicated to you your worth by just openly playing in your face, and you have now taken that understanding, or that communication of where you stand in that relationship. And that's what I feel with, Irish Africans and whatever. Because one thing I know is that, that would never fly here in the UK. It just wouldn't fly. Not even under the guise of, we're just trying to clamp down on illegal migration. That's why even like someone like Nigel Farage now is the Reform Party, and that movement now is really equivalent to the movement that was happening in those weeks. It's the same, I want to say, manifesto. It's that same, this is what we're doing it for. And even your average Brit is like, reform is a little bit too extreme for me. It's too extreme for me. And, I would much rather the Conservative Party, who conservatively, expresses that they would like to have that gap of superiority. But they've come to the understanding that, that just won't fly. Please, guys, stick with me, because what I'm trying to say is, like, when I now think of people like Saka being the wonder boy for England and poster boy for England, when I think of Ian Wright, who sits on the screen, Michael Richards, although I would love him to stand up a little bit, but when I think of Rio Ferdinand, who can come out and do what he did in my last video, put on the screen, I discussed that and how he kind of challenged Britain by saying, look, these boys scored the penalties. Where are you now? You're celebrating the goals, but last time you were complaining about it. And this is different to Rashida, who's doing the running right now in Ireland. This is different because, that's something to the side. Football, as we know, becomes that's the epicenter of the country when a country is progressing in football, isn't it? Like if Ireland were to progress right now in the World Cup, if Ireland were to progress in the Euros, you become, and even here where I'm living in the UK, it's a talk of the town. It's the epicenter. It's not like running, like the sign. Oh, okay, yeah. So to make I want to say make, but for the UK to have arrived at a place where Bellingham, Saka and Rashford, and these boys can be the face of Britain in these big times like tournaments, whatever, and then of course Ian Wright and all that stuff. It says something huge. I always underestimate the UK and because I compare it to America, but when I'm actually looking at it from now in comparison to Ireland, that's a huge amount of work. And when I say work, I'm thinking of, that's why I love to look at history. Whenever I see the Caribbeans here, the Windrush generation, I always think of the work. Because I think black people just think that time alone, mere time in itself, will develop this tolerance or develop this understanding, unity. I don't know. Family. I don't know what I want to call it, but we think that mere time will just develop this when that's actually not the case. It is what we will actually have done in that time. What we're not understanding is that England has had a chance to have George and Chenko moments, and they had Stephen Lawrence. These, and of course, there's been other cases. These monumental cases, and how the country then, like a relationship, how the country then either broke further apart or grew together, or how they understood, okay, we can't do that anymore. Okay, we can't look at that like that anymore. We've got to have a different perspective on this and that. All these events, Toyosi, who was stabbed, these shape the country. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now Rashida, even this. These scars, these things, they shape the country. Like, oh, okay, even now we saw the marches happening. Beforehand, everyone was saying, oh, we're not racist. We're lovely people. We make cups of tea. And I would look like crazy, like, because I said, oh, there's racism. Then all of a sudden, people were burning down the city. And we were like, okay, maybe we might have racism. And it's always like, oh, the bare minimum. It's only the small one. Oh, minority. Now you had minorities on marches. And now we're like, okay, I think maybe Harrison might have been. But it's not radical racism. It's only because of immigration. But then in your heart, okay, I can't vouch for everyone who's in the marches that there's not a racist bone in their body. That's it. And I think there is that reality. So these things, they come and then they begin to shape our understanding of, okay, where are we going? Who are we and where are we going? And that's why I love looking at British cultures, because over time, and my mom also today reminded me of John Barnes, when she first came, I think she was in her 20s, they were arguing whether or not John Barnes is British or not. Should he be representing the UK? And, there's so much that happens even when we think of, I'm throwing a lot at you right now, guys, but follow me. Diane Abbott is a black MP here. And she's not just merely a presence of a black MP. She's an antagonistic. She's been that from the moment she came in, the person who challenges everything, the person who says, and even in her recent later years, it's put her almost, her role at jeopardy. And there's so much, I was thinking, there's so much when you come, and anybody who comes to UK, there's so much that I don't even think anybody's arguing anymore that Britain is a white country. It sounds strange for me to say that, and even how we've arrived at a fully brown prime minister, who just came out of office. It's important for me to see this. It was so important. I know a lot of people may be conflicted of like, why are you speaking on Ireland if you're living in the UK? It's essential that we get this understanding, because I think a lot of times now we're in a bubble to, if you say you're not racist, what does that actually look like? If you came here, you would see, and it's not just about, because there's a lot of black people here. And there is a reason black people don't get into role. Like one of the things I said, get into role. Sorry, I had to finish my sentence. One of the things I noticed was like, I know a few people. I did a course here or something, and I met a few people who went on to actually get jobs in the BBC and blah blah blah. So I kind of, because I'm friends with them and they post themselves in the BBC when they're working and stuff like that, I get a look in on what that's like. And something as monumental as it doesn't get more British than the BBC, if you think about it like that. That place can be, flooded with black and brown people working there, having significant roles. Now, whether or not those black and brown people actually have a solid, strong say on using that platform to really be disruptive or not, this is why I say where America comes, because Americans now can be in high places like a TV station, whatever, and use that role, which we would see as very vulnerable position, like I'm here, I don't want to rock the boat, and they're there rocking the boat in high places, right? So that's that difference why I always now look to America. You can be working in a big news station and be very, very, honest and truthful, And I don't think you can go into RTE and find a complete mixture of backgrounds and whatnot, black people and whatever, And I don't think they would want you to believe that's just because, oh, it just coincidentally never happened. There's talent all around the country. I want to say the Irish as actually, although he thinks, contrast to popular belief, he thinks he sees the black man as his equal. He doesn't truly yet. There's so much layers to that. He doesn't truly yet see that. Like even now, if we think about a black man having the role as England manager, or sorry, that one too, but Ireland manager, right? That would be something that people are like, oh, I don't know. I'm blacks, you will understand me. Like, we have to now be able to identify that as racism. It's not like, okay, he's nice to me, but why do you think a black person, or Ireland's not racist, why? Because they're nice. Okay, why do you think a black person has that role? Oh, maybe because it just hasn't got there. But in your heart that I don't think they're ready for that yet. But that's what you qualify as racism. That is saying that one person's reality is not equal to another person's reality. Why? Because it would be more comfortable for the country to see a white man in that position than it is for them to see a black man in that position. Now, I could not even think of Ireland being covered with black players, carrying them through like a France or like in England, a tournament, and the whole country behind these black boys and celebrating this moment. I don't think they're there yet. And so when we take all this into account and we think about even the grassroots, I remember, like I said in that post, I remember in grassroots, simple as, just like Irish boys, their names would just be praised and hailed. And as a black boy, you're thinking, and I'm not going to boast about myself or my belief, although I've now grown to be very confident in my capability when I was playing, although I definitely had belief what people thought about my ability, or, that how people try to make me feel about my ability. And I'm now confidently saying now that when I don't play, I can say I definitely was a great player. But I'm not even speaking for myself when I say this. I'm speaking for black players who I knew. And I'm like, anyway, you're telling me, again, I'm using generic names, you're telling me Sean is better than Toby? Like, oh, no, yeah, Sean. And black players, you're sitting there thinking, okay, maybe I can be biased towards myself. Let me take me on this conversation. I know Toby's better than Sean. I know, but you seeing Sean getting picked up to go for trials. Sean wasn't in training on Thursday. Why? Because Sean was getting picked up. Sean came back with the Nottingham Forest badge. Everyone knows Sean's been out getting planes, and Danny's been getting planes, and whatever's getting planes, coming back in true form. And you sitting there thinking like, okay, what does it take? Because I know Toby's better than, and let's say Toby had one flaw. Oh, that flaw would be now blown up to be like, that's why Toby isn't being picked. But it's like, I can name 10 of Sean's flaws, And as you're black, if you want to know, like, well, you go and call a black, ask him if what I'm saying is 100%. It's 100%. But I know that if Toby was white, there would have been this passion to cultivate Tony and say, okay, yeah, Tony may have that flaw, whatever, but imagine if Tony put on that green jersey and took home the tournament. And I think UK has arrived at that place where you can see it right through. And I think that's what's even made their, of course they have their Premier League, but even their lower divisions, I think they have more of an open, I want to say, drafting, or, I don't want to say drafting, but it's open. It's open, black players, a lot of black players in the lower division and all sorts of players. But even when you look at the League One, a lot more just still white players. And it's like, I know Ireland doesn't have a shortage of black talent. I just know that. No one's going to tell me that they have a shortage of black talent. And even my mom today, we're just talking about, like, how Jude Bellingham, Jude Bellingham is a typical British story, black woman who married a white man and had a child. And I think that's why it matters. He means a lot to the country. He is a very typical British story, And with that being said, I want to say, because I'm saying a lot, this episode will be quite long. I'm just saying, like, we still have so much to go before certain things look normal to us. If you get what I'm trying to say, like, I'm going to keep 100. I remember a lot of people came to me when I had the success, and I'll put a picture up on the screen when I had the success as a young Irish boy, as a rapper. And I remember a lot of people eventually in the later years came to me and said, Hassan, you're the first time I saw a black boy on the TV, and like on white TV, like where them white folks be, and that's when I realized, oh, I can be there. Oh, I'm allowed in that room. That room they don't let niggas in. They gonna let us in that room. And I always tell it now today on a personal level with people. Now, when I can look back and reevaluate that, I definitely felt like the white faces around me helped me be more compatible in those rooms. And I also knew I had to reshape myself in order to get the respect that I desired in rooms such as those rooms. I didn't feel like I could be authentically black and African and be completely appreciated in those rooms. Again, what I spoke about earlier in the episode, that kind of uneducated perspective on Africans and our black culture, okay, all that, okay. So, I can see that. And as an African child growing up in Ireland, you can see that. And you're like, okay, let me fix that. I want them to know that I'm a civilized black. Let me reshape myself. And what I'm fighting for is black kids to be able to come straight out that, his Nigerian home and be that and not feel that pressure, to lose himself, And let me, this is why I would say, it's one thing with integrating. Assimilation is very sad, especially the black assimilation, because you're running from that narrative that has been placed on Africa. That elephant in the room about African and what people expect, that image that was painted. That's why integration, and don't put that conversation on us, because it's criminal, because it's people who are running away from something that is completely unfair, that are lies that have been tied to the meaning of being African. That this lack of intelligence narrative, this uncivilized narrative, this incompetence narrative. Although they're not in the forefront, they're in the subconscious mind, and it pollutes the perspective. So even when an African is good or is great, it's like, oh, here's a good of a bad bunch. Oh, here's a different one of a bad. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, it's not how you look at a French or an Italian or what. You know what I'm trying to say? So. Yeah, I could go on this topic all day because this is really important. So basically what I'm trying to say is, one, how I think Ireland could get to a place where they are having black people help them in tournaments like France, or are creating an Mbappe, or are creating of course this is the truth of it, I remember I was watching a show, I was watching the Champions League match. I'll try to end on this now, and I think it was the final, this year's final that just went, and Vinny Jr. did a trick, and then the commentator said, oh, he thinks he's in Rio de Janeiro, he thinks he's still in the playground in Rio de Janeiro, and even a white man could say that. What does that tell you? That tells you there is a flamboyancy in the black player, that it's there how we dress, it's there and how we behave. It doesn't have to be this negative thing that people don't want to. They want to go. Remember earlier I said that. I want to stray from saying, yes, there is flamboyancy in the DNA of a black person. And that does come through in how they play football. And that does come through in how they behave. And that can be put onto your team. And that can be on the Irish team. And that can be there. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, again, I wouldn't really put the African British in that, because I do believe they're a little bit rebranded. I don't know how to say it. I could go on a long route there. That's a rabbit hole to say, but yeah, that's a rabbit hole I just opened up. Basically, what I was trying to say is that Africans in Europe are very westernized. You know what I mean? Or especially in the UK or Ireland. So you're not really getting a raw African. Whereas I feel like French, if you look at the French Africans, even on the French team, Cisse, you still had this very African man in a French jersey. Do you understand? So you got the fruits of that flamboyancy in that African, in that French jersey. I don't know whatever way, culturally it's set up there in society and, demographic, however it's set up there. But that obviously helped in retaining an African in its core, but, a French on the outer shell. And then you got the beautiful players that we get out of France. And that's what I was trying to say, that maybe in Ireland we would have to also develop, and even the UK, that environment that allows a black person to be his flamboyant self and then just put on that white jersey or just put on that green jersey. So, this is something that I feel like if we fix the fundamentals of the country in Ireland, it would shine in the sports. It would shine in from the grassroots, from players getting picked in grassroots, from everything. If we diversified the coaches who were actually, scouting and picking, it would change everything. Even when you look at England squad, they've got, Hasselbank, come on, and it's a diversified coaching staff. All these things, it's obviously that same way even down in the lower divisions. It affects the culture of the country in itself. And like I said, and I'll sign off on this, it is not going to be the mere presence of black people that say, okay, because black people have been here for 2 years. No, I now look at things from a historical perspective. It's every generation saying, you're going to know I'm here. I'm black and British. You're going to know I'm black and Irish. You're going to get used to my face on the TV screen. You're going to get used to sitting next to me in a big company. You're going to get used to doing this. So as much as Ireland, we're super inclusive. Oh, Ireland of many welcomes. When you the reality of that is actually not true, because that actually reflects in, we have one catcher now on a morning show. There's plenty of Jermaine geniuses and people who present stuff on BBC. Do you know what I'm trying to say? It's like those roles that kind of shape those positions, that kind of shape or are the face of Irish culture. I believe that's when you really get to see where we are. And yeah, so I could go on all day, guys. I've just given you a mouthful. But if we fix this, the fundamentals of the country, I'm telling you, it will reflect, and you might find yourself in European Euro 2020. I don't know. Maybe not this year. Maybe not next year. Definitely not this year. Maybe not the next time. I don't know when, because it's going to take a lot of hard work. It's going to take a lot of cultural development, and not just superficial one, because the superficial one is what we've done so far, and really it's not shown to be anything, influential, right? It's just something that's, not really effective. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe.
And I'm on a mission for you.